Chapter 631 Reinforcements 1. Within a tranquil region of the human domain. The grass swayed in response to the passage of a light breeze, with its movement consistent with the direction in which the wind was blowing. At this very instant, the air abruptly began to warp, and a number of little footprints appeared on top of the grass. So this is the human domain? A rough and groggy voice sounded. Rander, who was looking at the enormous metropolis in the distance, was the one who spoke. Night had fallen on Ashton City, and the bright city lights were visible from where he suddenly appeared, making it all the prettier. It doesn't look too bad. Another voice sounded from behind him. Although it looks more beautiful than efficient. From just a glance, you can tell that the defensive system is filled with flaws. You're right, Jomnuk. Rander caressed his beard. He took a minute to etch the scene of the city in the distance, and then he materialized a small round object from thin air. Let's see. We should be in the right location. Rander took his sight away from the item and looked around him. But I don't see anyone. Are they perhaps late? Weren't we supposed to meet here? His brow furrowed a little. It was essential to emphasize that Rander was not a patient person in any way. As a matter of fact, his patience was notoriously short, and all of the more senior dwarves were well aware of this trait of his. A while ago, back when Ren was in the Dwarven domain, he was successful in deceiving the majority of elders in the Congress due, in no small part, to the fact that he possessed this particular character trait. If it weren't for the fact that I owe him one and that he promised to show me something interesting, I never would have come here. Rander reacted angrily by crossing his arms and harumphing. Jomnuk and the many other dwarves who were standing behind him were not the least bit taken aback by his antics. When they found out that the guy who was scheduled to receive them was running late, they had more or less anticipated that he would behave in this manner. I'm sorry I'm late. At the very moment that Rander was about to throw another tantrum, a hushed voice echoed from some distance, and a man dressed in black with two crimson-red eyes appeared from behind a tree. He was none other than Kevin. In the instant that the eyes of the dwarves fell on him, they immediately stopped talking. Observing him from afar, Rander's eyes furrowed. Meanwhile, Kevin continued to head in their direction with a friendly smile on his face. I apologize for my tardiness. I wasn't made aware of the exact location where you would show up. The only reason why I was able to find you was because of the fluctuation that came from the portal that you guys came out of. Kevin scratched his head in embarrassment. Then, sweeping his eyes toward the other dwarves, he secretly counted inside his head. 18 dwarves. What exactly are you planning on doing, Ren? It had been on Ren's orders that he was instructed to come here on the 4th day that he left for Umora to pick up several people. Among them there were a handful of prominent figures from the Dwarven domain. Jomnuk and Rander. Despite the fact that he wasn't quite clear on Ren's objectives, he went ahead and promised to assist him. There were also several other instructions that he had left with him, which he was planning on carrying out after he was finished with the current task. This isn't the first time that I'm following Ren's arrangements. A bitter smile crossed his face when his thoughts paused there. The smile faded not long after, but it soon re-emerged on his face. After casting his eyes over the other dwarves, he took a few steps to the side and motioned for them to come with him. Please come with me for now. I'll lead you to the location. Let's go. Rander gave Kevin a quick glance before waving his hand at the other dwarves. Kevin sighed in relief when he saw the dwarves moving. Turning his back on them, he started to lead them toward the location that Ren had told him to lead them to. Oh right, I'm also supposed to tell the others. Recalling something, Kevin lowered his head to check his watch. He tapped the screen and dialed a number. Beep. Beep. Demon Hunter Guild, uppermost floor. Amanda, where will you be going for the next couple of days? And why are you refusing to go with the bodyguards I assigned to you? You are only A rank, and with how popular you are, I'm afraid that something might happen to you. The anxious tone of Edward's voice could be heard across his office. Amanda sat opposite him with her legs crossed. Don't worry, Dad, I'll be going on a short trip and it won't take too long. What trip? Is it dangerous? Maybe. There was a tinge of uncertainty in her tone. If Amanda had to be honest, she wasn't sure. She was just given a brief overview of what she needed to do and what was in store for her in the upcoming days. It shouldn't be anything too dangerous, but I can't guarantee that something won't go wrong. Those were the exact words Ren had told her when giving her a brief rundown of the situation. Is there any way I can change your mind about going alone? Her father's voice took her out of her thoughts. Amanda shook her head as she cast a glance his way. No. I'm sorry, but I've been told that I can't bring anyone with me, but don't worry. I'll be fine. This was true. Nobody else but her and a few other individuals knew about the operation that was being carried out, as it was conducted in a manner that was exceedingly covert. Leaking even the smallest piece of information about the operation might result in catastrophic consequences. This was especially true in the event that the knowledge was obtained by demons or someone connected to them. I'll take my leave now, Dad. Amanda stood up from her seat and checked her watch. I won't be able to talk to you for the next couple of days, so please don't worry. Even if it takes longer, don't worry. I'll be fine. I'm with Ren. Okay. Edward relented after seeing just how stubborn Amanda was being. Taking a sip of the sip of whiskey that sat beside him, he commented quietly. Have a safe trip and make sure to protect your body at all costs. You might never know what that beast will do. By beast, he was referring to Ren. As Amanda listened to her father's comments, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. Ever since the event that date a few years back in which she went missing for more than a week, Edward had become particularly overprotective of her. When Ren went to him to apologize for what happened, Edward was infuriated. Despite that, it led to nothing as he never did anything. Although Edward was angry, he was understanding and knew that Ren wasn't actually at fault in the situation. Nonetheless, he still developed a little grudge, as one might say. One that became more evident when the two of them started dating. It wasn't anything big, more like petty remarks here and there, similar to the ones he just blurted out a couple of moments ago. Amanda honestly found his reactions funny, especially when they made Ren's expression change. She liked seeing all the different types of expressions Ren made. They were cute. This was probably why she never told him to stop. I'm bad. Ring. Ring. The moment she was about to leave her father's office, her phone began to ring, interrupting her train of thought. She pulled out her phone, checked the caller ID and saw that it was Kevin. Before opening the door and walking out, she gave a quick glance in the direction of her father and waved her hand. I'm leaving, she softly whispered. Like, the door closed behind her. She then picked up the phone after leaving his office. Yes. Are you ready? Kevin's soft voice echoed into her ears after she spoke. Amanda nodded her head. Yes, I'm ready. All right, come to the location that I sent to your phone. Make sure to be here in less than an hour. Understood. Amanda's face turned solemn. She then posed a question. Who else is coming with me? Several people. Kevin ambiguously replied. Amanda's brows furrowed. Anyone that I know in particular? Jean, Melissa, and Emma. There was a slight pause during the mention of the last name. Amanda's brow raised. They're coming too? Yes, Ren requested their help too. I didn't think they would accept his request at first, but they surprisingly all readily agreed to help. I see. Amanda lowered her head and massaged her chin. He had a thought. What about you? Are you coming? No, I won't be. You aren't. Amanda was a bit surprised by his answer. Kevin followed up not long after. I can't leave at the moment. With the impending war, my absence will be quickly noticed by the executives of the union. Ah, right. She almost forgot that he was someone from the union. His explanation did make sense. Also, Kevin paused for a moment and the line went quiet. Did I lose signal? Amanda looked at the phone display after the line continued to remain quiet for the next half a minute. Once she made sure that the connection was still on, she called for his name. Kevin. There are several things that I need to do during those 4 days. His voice echoed not long after. Amanda opened her mouth but no words came out. She let out a long exhale shortly after. I understand. I won't force you to come. I'll be arriving shortly. Please wait for me. All right. Amanda hung up the phone shortly after. But she stood rooted on the spot for a couple of minutes following the call. There is something wrong with Kevin. Amanda thought to herself. She had a keen awareness of the world around her and the people. Her past had contributed to the formation of this aspect of her personality. She was able to deduce a number of things from someone's statements by paying close attention to what they were saying and by carefully analyzing the tone of their voices, alongside the contents of their words. Most notably, she was able to pick up the pause right before he said Emma's name. Is something going on with their relationship? Could that possibly explain why he sounded so glum while he was on the phone talking to her? Amanda was currently juggling a lot of thoughts in her head. It is unfortunate, but this is none of my business. After some time had passed, she decided to let it go. If it was true that it had something to do with his relationship with Emma, then she had no business interfering. She wouldn't like it if others butted in her relationship with Ren. I better get going. Amanda put the phone away and made her way toward the bottom floor of the guild. Along the way she had a thought. I should still pay close attention to the situation in case I'm wrong. Chapter 632 Reinforcements. This place hasn't changed since the last time that I've been here. It was shit as usual. Jean moved in the direction of an old and dilapidated warehouse that was off in the distance. It was a building that he was acquainted with as he had been there in the past. Ren's mercenary group headquarters. He didn't have the fondest of memories of the place as it reminded him of the incident that happened a while back, when he was kidnapped against his will by Kevin and Ren. Those bastards. Even now, as he reflected on the occurrences that took place a long time ago, he felt an unsettling rage rising up from the depths of his being. It took a few deep breaths before he became calm again. Let's calm down for now. Ren isn't even here at the moment. There is no point in getting angry about something that happened in the past. Despite what he said, he never relaxed his clenched teeth as he moved closer and closer to the warehouse's entrance. He was clearly still upset about what had happened in the past. In any case, this wasn't the reason why he was at the warehouse at the moment. He was there for a completely different reason. Another planet, huh? Ren extended his invitation to travel to another planet yet again. This time he did not resort to another kidnapping. Or at least he did not attempt the same thing again, and even if he did, Jean did not intend to fall for the same trick again. Regardless, after hearing Ren's offer, Jean was about to deny his request once more. However, just as he was about to refuse, he realized something. Isn't this the best opportunity to skip out on all the dates that grandfather is planning on having me attend? If he left for another planet, wouldn't he be able to skip the dates that were planned for him? It was at that moment that he stopped hesitating and readily accepted the offer. To him, anything was better than attending those blind dates. Yes, please. He arrived at the entrance of the warehouse and rang the doorbell. You're here. It wasn't long before the door opened and Jean came face to face with Kevin. Emichum. Jean greeted Kevin with a simple nod and entered the warehouse. What a sharp contrast. The stark contrast between the outside and inside of the warehouse never ceased to amaze Jean. Almost as soon as he walked through the door, he had the impression that he had been transported to an entirely new location. From the furnishings and fittings as well to the rooms themselves, everything seemed to be made with the most up-to-date and high-priced technologies and materials. The equipment in the training room was even better than the best spots at his guild, which was saying something. To tell you the truth, Jean was currently experiencing feelings of jealousy. Just where in the world did Ren get all of this money from? If he had to make an estimate, all of this would cost at least several billion of you to make. Since when has Ren been so rich? Jean wondered to himself as he kept looking around with amazement. It wasn't long before they stopped in front of a small metallic door. Coming to a halt, Kevin turned around and seriously said, "What you're about to see, make sure to keep it a secret, all right?" "Okay." Jean nodded his head upon seeing how serious Kevin looked. Kevin's face softened when he saw Jean nod. After that, he grabbed the door handle and opened the door with a little bit of force. "All right, let's go in." Jean let out a strange sound at the exact moment Kevin opened the door, and he was able to get a good look at what was behind the door. Dwarves. What met his sight upon opening the door were dwarves. It wasn't just one of them, but there were more than a dozen of them, and they were all currently moving around a room that was the same size as a tennis pitch, connecting some strange wires to what appeared to be a large portal. The room was painted entirely in white, and it was crawling with dwarves who were busy moving around and connecting various devices located all over the space. Jean rigidly turned his head to look at Kevin. "Are they setting up a portal?" "They are." Kevin nodded his head. "You see, even though my skill enables me to set up a portal, it still has a cooldown that I have to respect. It may have decreased over the years as my strength has grown, but I simply can't teleport that many people with me at once, so I found that setting up a portal was the best option. Plus, with the dwarves here, teleporting across planets shouldn't be a problem." "Okay." Jean nodded his head while he stared at the dwarves who were hard at work. He then asked something else. "Will they also be coming with us?" "Us?" Kevin looked at him with a strange look. He then shook his head. I don't know if you've been made aware of this, but I won't be coming with you guys. I still have a lot of things to do at the union. Right. Jean nodded his head in understanding. His excuse made sense. Unlike him, who worked for an independent guild run by his family, Kevin worked for the union and was directly responsible for stopping the monolith. Given the current situation, it made sense for him to not have time to come with them. What about them? The dwarves. Yeah, the dwarves. Why exactly are they coming with us? Jean crossed his arms together while his eyes swept over the dwarves that were hard at work. His eyes carefully scanned the dwarves before him. He then looked at Kevin with a confused look. Is Rin going to a planet that used to belong to the dwarves? I don't know. Kevin shrugged his shoulders with a smile. All I know is that Rin invited them personally and that they agreed to his request. If you want to know more, you have to ask Rin yourself when you meet him. At the moment, they're setting up the portal that you and the others will use. I see. Jean quietly mumbled. It wasn't long before he spotted a couple of familiar figures standing at the far end of the room. Melissa, Amanda, and Emma? He instantly recognized them and was surprised to see them there. Are they also coming? Yes. Kevin nodded his head slightly. At the same time, Emma's face turned to face him and their eyes met. Neither one of them spoke before Emma cast her angry gaze away from him. It looks like they're having a fight. Jean easily picked this up but chose to remain silent. It was none of his business, and it wasn't exactly the first time that this happened. The fact that Melissa didn't seem to think anything of it was also proof of this. Now that I think about it, why is Melissa also here? Never did he expect her to come here. She wasn't the type of person to come to this type of stuff. Seemingly able to read Jin's thoughts, Kevin spoke. Melissa is trying to create something new, but she's missing a few ingredients that she can't find in the human domain. She wants to try her luck on Amora, the planet you'll be visiting. Oh. Jean finally came to an understanding. If it's like that, then it makes sense. What about you? Why are you going to Amora? Kevin suddenly asked him a question just as he was about to greet the two of them. Jin's face hardened and his body froze completely. I want to train. It was fortunate that he was quick to react, as he quickly devised a plausible excuse. At this point, the words, I want to train, had become synonymous with him. Oh, that makes sense. Kevin didn't think too much of his excuse and headed toward a couple of dwarfs in the distance. With nothing else to do, Jean followed him from behind. Hey humans! A loud burly voice suddenly echoed throughout the entire room. When Jean turned to see who was speaking, his gaze was drawn to a particular dwarf in the distance. He's strong. Jean could tell he was extremely powerful just by looking at him. Not only that, but he seemed to exude a commanding presence that made everyone around him easily obey his commands. Even Jean felt extremely pressured by his presence. Is there anything, Rander? The only one that seemed completely unaffected was Kevin as he kept his smile and asked. Or is everything already sorted? Yes, we're all sorted. Rander moved to the side of the portal and pressed a button on one of the keyboards that were attached to the panels that were connected to it. As soon as he pressed on the key, the mana that was already present in the atmosphere began to stir, and the portal began to function. The portal is all set up. Get ready, we're about to leave. Chapter 633 Reinforcements 3. As soon as Ryan pressed a few of the buttons on the control panel, the portal that he had constructed began to behave in a peculiar way. There was a rustling in the air, and on the control panel, there were suddenly rows upon rows of data that appeared with each second that passed. The information that was written on the panels was incomprehensible to me. Even with the chip in my head, I couldn't make heads or tails of what was written on them. The same couldn't be said for Rain, who looked through the data in a composed manner and typed a variety of different codes at the speed at which they were appearing. With the sudden press of a key, Ryan urged us back. The portal is connected. Take a couple of steps back. Sure. I complied with his request and moved a couple of steps back. After not even a fraction of a second had passed since I had taken a step back, the portal started violently trembling, and an eerie whistling sound that was reminiscent of that of the wind blowing inside of a storm started to reverberate throughout the room. Rada, rada, rada. The large metallic portal began to shake, as did the room, which had already been shaking slightly before this occurred. Okay, the connection is established. The loud reverberation of Ryan's voice occurred at the precise moment when the shaking started to become more intense. He pressed another key and everything went deathly quiet. The shaking stopped and so did all the noise. Ryan hurriedly moved toward where the portal was with a large core in the palm of his hand. "Ready?" he asked whilst looking at both Angelica and I. Meeting Angelica's eyes, we both nodded our heads as we quietly observed from a distance. "Ready. Ready. Okay." Ryan shattered the core in his hand and a wave of mana exploded in the air. The scene looked similar to a large explosion of colors as the mana instantly started to spread throughout the entire room. Well, at least attempted to. When Ryan placed his hand on the edge of the portal, the mana that was previously unrestrictedly moving through the room abruptly came to a stop. Then, much like a magnet, it began to draw closer and closer to the center of the portal. "Done." Ryan wiped the sweat that had accumulated on his forehead and moved toward where we were. "What do we do now?" I curiously asked while paying attention to the portal that was slowly starting to form. "We just wait." "How long?" "Not much, just a minute." And just as he said, by the time a minute passed, the portal fully formed. A green light lit up at the top of the portal and figures began to appear one by one in the room we were in. "It's working." I could hear Ryan's faint whisper coming from beside me as my attention was drawn toward the figures that appeared one by one inside the room. "I'm glad that I was able to be of help," Ryan quietly mumbled. I ruffled his hair a bit when I heard the last few words. "You've always been helpful. Here's a couple of figures I haven't seen in a while." I was cut mid-sentence by a rough voice. A thin smile formed on my face as I focused my attention on the source of the sound. "Jamnuk Rander, it has been a while. What an interesting place this is." They had already lost interest in me by the time they caught a glimpse of the room we were in. I didn't mind this at all as I stepped forward and gave them a brief rundown of where we were. I had previously omitted this information for security measures. "We're currently on a planet called Imora. It was an old Orson planet which was mainly used for agriculture." "Imora." Rander massaged his beard upon hearing the name of the planet. His eyes lit up after a while and he slapped his thigh. "Ha! I know this place." "You do?" Jamnuk couldn't contain his surprise at the fact that Rander seemed to know where we were as his head snapped in his direction. I too was surprised as my focus shifted toward him. "How do you know?" "Hee hee." Rander held his belly and laughed. "I spend most of my time studying as opposed to you who spends most of his time playing with nonsense. I remember coming across the description of this planet a couple of years ago." "Oh, enlighten me." Jamnuk's brow arched upward. Rander smirked in contempt. "If I don't remember wrong, this planet wasn't just any regular planet, but was actually the biggest agricultural planet among the 7 Orson planets of the past. In the age before the orcs were conquered by the demons, there used to be 7 main Orson planets, which were Nostrolia, Pastralia, Onacy, Alida, Chypra, Jumia, Zohates. All these planets held great strategic importance and were where the main forces of the orcs resided, but..." Rander raised his finger in the air as he looked at Jamnuk. Despite how important all of the planets were, their importance was nothing in comparison to that of Imora, the planet we're currently on. In fact, one might even argue that the main reason why the orcs lost the war was precisely because of the loss of this planet. Had they not lost this planet, they might have been able to repel the demons back. During the time that Rander was talking, he walked around the room. As he touched the walls of the room, a shine began to appear in his eyes. Not only is this location ideal for cultivating medical plants that possess aura-like properties, but it is also crammed to the gills with incredibly rare ores and minerals. This place is a gold mine, damn it. He slapped his thigh in excitement before he looked at me. "Why in the world didn't you tell me about this before? If you told me about this place earlier, we could have already extracted tons and tons of metal, which would have been extremely useful for us in the upcoming war." I apologetically shook my head. "Sorry, but I wasn't exactly free since the time we last saw each other. A lot happened and this just flew off my mind." This was the sad reality of things. With everything going on in my life, I never realized how important Imora was. I couldn't be fully blamed for this because portal technology had only recently advanced to the point where it could connect to places that were thousands of miles away. And the dwarves' generosity in imparting a great deal of the technical expertise that they possessed was a significant factor in making this accomplishment possible. In any case, I could have come here with just Kevin, but it would have been impossible to bring the others. There was a limit to his power. Anyway, we should take things easy for now. A war is still ongoing at the moment. A war. Jomnuk and Rander took a moment to look at each other. They then peered their sights toward the far end of the room. Their brows simultaneously furrowed. You're right, but it seems to be coming to an end. Rander was the first to speak after he took his eyes away from the wall. I replied shortly after. This is, unfortunately, only the first wave. The dummy wave, I presume. The real one will come soon. The frown on Rander's face deepened. Rin, you do know that Jomnuk and I can't stay for long. With Inferno showing signs of movement, I'm afraid that we will have to return before the war erupts, so we can't really help. Why? Don't worry about it. I dismissively waved my hand at Rander. I didn't call you guys to help me with the war. I've only called you here to help me set up the portal and help me out with a couple of other things. I glanced toward the other dwarves that were slowly appearing one by one inside the room. There are many things that I want to construct here, and I can only do it with your help. First and foremost, I intended to rebuild the entire castle over here. With the war approaching, it required a more effective defensive system, and this worn-down castle was just not going to cut it. Following that, I intended to relocate my headquarters, and the dwarves were the best at constructing an adequate defensive system with all of the latest technology. For example, I needed a place that could efficiently produce mana in which I could train. The lack of mana in Amora's atmosphere was easily felt, as my strength had slowed significantly since arriving here. It was fortunate that I had brought several cores with me, but despite my wealth, I wasn't wealthy enough to carelessly consume cores in exchange for mana. In any case, the dwarves knew how to build rooms that could channel mana from the core more efficiently, allowing me to train in an environment similar to that of Earth. With time passing faster here, it would later prove to be a huge advantage for me. Obviously, I'm not asking you guys to do this for free. As I've already informed you before, I'll present you guys with a great opportunity in exchange for you guys helping me construct a couple of things. And don't you think I've managed to keep my word? You have. Rander sincerely nodded his head. I'll have to admit, this place will indeed benefit us a lot. Since we are people of our word, we will do as you request. Great. I smiled in relief once I heard Rander's words. I was relieved to hear that. Boom. The room began to shake violently again, and several people lost their balance in the process. My mouth opened as I turned to look at the room's ceiling. Regarding the war, you can leave it to me. Plus. My mouth stopped as a few familiar figures appeared from out of thin air. My main reinforcements are already here. Chapter 634 City Plan. You guys are finally here. I approached the familiar figures who appeared from the portal. They were none other than Emma, Melissa, Jean, and Amanda. Where exactly are we? Emma was the first person to speak, and she did so while she curiously looking around the room. I barely feel any mana in the air. There are some traces of demonic energy, but there's also a trace of something else. But I'm not exactly sure about what it is. It's aura, and we're currently on a planet called Amora. I replied, giving them a brief introduction of the planet we were on. This was an old Orson planet that was primarily concerned with agriculture and farming. Because there are many beasts on this planet, most of the food that orcs used to eat come from here. When you say agriculture, do they still do that? Melissa inquired, raising her glasses with a finger. As I shifted my gaze to her, I shook my head. To be honest, I don't know. I will have to ask Silik. He might have an idea of what you're looking for. Melissa approached me before I told her about Amora with a detailed request on a specific property she desired from a plant. I didn't know of any plants with the same properties as the ones she requested at the time, but when I was reminded of my trip to Amora, I told her that if she came with me, she might be able to find what she was looking for. To be honest, the chances were slim, but it was better than nothing. Nonetheless, to my astonishment, she readily agreed, which explained why she was here in the first place. Boom. The building started to shake once more, startling everyone present. I looked up toward the ceiling before looking back at the others. There's a war going on upstairs at the moment if you're curious as to why the building suddenly shook. It's almost coming to an end, so you don't have to worry too much. What you do have to worry about is the next war. That one is going to be a tough one. Not only would there be a significantly greater number of demons than there were at the moment, but their overall force would also be greater with even more marquee ranked demons showing up. Also, I had a sneaking suspicion that at least a demon of the Duke rank was going to show up, but I couldn't say for certain that this was the case. Silik was the one who broke the news to me, but even he wasn't entirely sure about the information he shared. If this turned out to be the case, then I had no choice but to take everything more seriously. The gap between S+ and SS- was much wider than one might think. With my current set of skills, I could pose a threat to someone of that rank. That, however, was dependent on my opponent. It was nearly impossible for me to propose a fight if they were ranked higher than simply SS-. I need to quickly break through. Once again, I was reminded of how urgently I needed to break through. Here. A soft voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned my head to see Amanda handing me a small black ring. My eyes lit up when I saw the ring. Oh, right. I grasped the ring from Amanda's hand and tossed it to Rander. Rander, catch. Huh, what? Unprepared, the ring fumbled in his hands. It wasn't until he was finally able to get his hand on the ring that he breathed a sigh of relief and glared at me. What in the world are you doing? I didn't respond and simply motioned with my head. How about you check what's inside before you complain? Rander's brow furrowed. Nevertheless, he acted in accordance with my request and examined the contents of the ring. Soon after that, he turned his head to look at me, and his eyebrows immediately began to arch upward. This is definitely a lot of stuff. Just what in the world are you trying to have built? A lot of things. I smiled at him. I want to first have this castle reinforced with some defensive artifacts, and at the same time want you to help me set up a mana chamber where I can train. With the things inside of the ring, it shouldn't be a problem for you guys to be able to build that stuff. Am I wrong? No. Rander shook his head. After that, he passed the ring on to Jomnuk, who was engaged in some light conversation with the other dwarfs that were present. What do we have here? Jomnuk took the ring from Rander's hand. When he checked the contents of the ring, he exhibited a response that was comparable to that of Rander's. Interesting. This is a lot of stuff. More than one would actually need to build the things that you've requested. Clearly, you're planning something else. Jomnuk tossed the ring in my direction and looked back at Rander. How much time do we have? If we take into consideration that time here flows 10 times faster, 20 days. Within 20 days we can try to build everything that he requested us to build. In the meantime, I'll send a couple of dwarves to check out the surrounding mountains and see the best area to mine. Rander replied after he took out a stopwatch from his dimensional saps. He quickly got to work after that. After giving commands to the other dwarves in the room, the atmosphere in the room abruptly changed, becoming much livelier as an assortment of tools suddenly materialized out of nowhere and filled the entire space. I nodded in satisfaction when I saw just how efficient the dwarves were. It might take a while, but if things go smoothly, it won't be long before I manage to build enough forces to co-act against Jezebeth. My fists secretly clenched when I thought of Jezebeth. The scene of him killing Small Snake in front of my eyes was still deeply imprinted into my mind. There was nothing that was going to stop me from killing him. Nothing at all. What should we be doing? It was Jin's voice that snapped me out of my thoughts. Once I turned my head to look at him and the others, I motioned to them with my hand. Don't worry about that, I've got a couple of rooms prepared for you guys. Just make yourself comfortable for the next couple of days. It would be best if you guys got a good idea of the internal structure of the castle. It will prove a lot more useful than you guys think. I grasped the door handle and pushed the door back. Just I was about to leave, I remembered something and turned back to look at them. Oh right. I massaged my chin and thought. I almost forgot that they're supposed to be here in secret. Should I have Silig shut down a certain part of the castle so that no one apart from me and the others can't enter? Ashton City, Kasha headquarters. The room became eerily quiet after everyone entered the portal. Kevin was the only one left, and he swept his gaze across the room before settling on one of the panels in the distance. It contained Imora's coordinates, courtesy of him who shared it to the dwarves. I better get going. I'll be seeing Rin in a couple of days anyway. He was going to teleport to Imora as soon as he was finished with his business. There were a couple of things that he needed to do there. Other than that, his workload over the next couple of days would be anything but small. Among the things he needed to do for the Union, he needed to kill a couple of more individuals as well as all of the secret branches set up by the monolith. He had to do this in order to ensure that the war would be won without any hiccups. Kevin cast his gaze around the room. In that time, his eyes paused on all the cameras that were present in the room. Secretly channeling the mana inside of his body, the cameras stopped working and he extended his hand forward where a red book formed. He opened the book and read through its contents. Almost there. He closed the book and a bright white light quickly engulfed the room. The white light spread throughout the room before merging with Kevin. Time codex absorption. 0%. 35%. 100%. A notification prompt appeared in his vision. Kevin paid no mind to it as he waved his hand and dismissed it. Then, casting another gaze at the room, he stopped channeling his mana and the cameras returned to normal. Alright, since Rin is busy, I better get going as well. Monica is probably going to nag at me if I come late. Kevin grumbled aloud while his shoulders slumped down in defeat. Just as he was about to reach the door, Kevin's feet came to a sudden halt and his face changed a little. Ding. 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 His vision was suddenly filled with a plethora of different notification prompts, which served to alert him. However, it wasn't long before a more substantial notification materialized in front of him, and at that moment, a chilly light flashed in his eyes. The time remnant has set his sights on you. The side of Kevin's cheeks began to clench as he concentrated his eyes on the notification prompt that was in front of him. So you're finally going to make a move. He had almost forgotten about it because he had been silent for so long. But now that the truce was finally coming to an end and Rin was still in control of his body, the other Rin planned on taking matters into his own hands and acting independently. Kevin secretly smiled to himself. So be it, I think it's about time the two of us finally met after such a long time. Chapter 635 City Plan. Bang. Sparks flew through the air as Hein easily deflected the demon's attack with his shield. He then brought the shield near his shoulder and smashed his body against the demon, sending it tumbling toward the ground. Iron Lance. After delivering the initial blow, he followed it up by penetrating the demon with his extended hand, which had a thin gray hue extending forward in the form of a pointy spear. Spurt. Black blood spilled all over Hein's body in the process, dyeing his clothes and shield a black color. His hand continued to penetrate deeply into the demon's body until finally coming to a stop when he felt something hard. Exerting a little more force, a glass-shattering sound echoed. Crash. Thank God I'm no longer in my old phase. His mouth twitched when he saw the state his shield was in. It was completely dyed in black. Had it been the past him, he would have immediately freaked out at the thought of his shield getting dirty, but it no longer bothered him as much. It still did, but just not as much as it did in the past. This is tiring. Hein's breathing was rough. He had slain so many demons that he had lost count, and as he lifted his head to look ahead, he groaned audibly. Just how many are there? The number seemed endless. Hein, pay attention. He was suddenly startled by the sudden sound of Leopold's voice coming from behind him. Suddenly, an energy blast shot past his cheek and exploded a couple of meters in front of him where a demon was standing. Boom. Hein turned to look back. Thanks. Don't lose focus in the middle of battle. Ava approached him from behind. She was currently sitting on a large gray wolf. The wolf was about double Hein's height, towering over most of the orcs on the battlefield. There was also an intimidating presence exuding from its body, alerting the many demons around them. Seeing her approaching, Hein instinctively slammed his shield towards his right side, resulting in the instantaneous death of a demon that tried to sneak up on him. All right. Hein nodded his head dismissively. A few seconds later, he stepped on the dead demon's body, destroying its core directly. I was just thinking about how long we'll have to fight. From the looks of things, we'll still be fighting demons for a long time. You're not wrong. Leopold commented from the side as he rested his shotgun on his shoulder. With his free hand, he cut a demon's body in half. But you don't have to worry too much. He pointed toward the distance. The war is going to end a lot sooner than you think. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground began violently shaking, and Hein could hear the agonized cries of the demons off in the distance. When he turned his head to look at what was going on, he was astounded to see the orc chief slashing his axe through more than a dozen demons. In every place where his axe cut, demon parts fell and black rain began to fall. Wow! Hein muttered in amazement. The ferocious and imposing manner in which he dispatched the demons as though he were trimming some weed left a deep impression in Hein's mind. Who is he? Lien's voice echoed beside him at the moment. That over there is an orc, Liam. He is currently fighting against demons. Hein explained when he realized that Liam was standing next to him. He made sure to sound as comprehensible as possible. Liam looked at him with a look filled with disgust. What's with that look? Don't tell me that you've forgotten about orcs and demons. Who are you again? It was Hein's turn to go silent. Just as he was about to say something back, Leopold's energy beam once again brushed past his cheek, killing a demon behind him. Boom. Hein glared at Leopold. Can you not do that? Then pay more attention to your surroundings. Leopold shrugged his shoulders. Guys, focus, let's finish this quickly. I want to go back and get changed. Ava's voice echoed, and a large shadow fell across everyone's faces as her wolf leaped forward and bit into a couple of demons. Fighting while holding back is boring, so let's finish this as fast as possible. She disappeared into the distance after that. Taking a look at the others beside him, Hein rushed in the direction of where she went. Hey, wait for me. You're supposed to stay behind me. I'm a tank for a reason. I felt Rander's gaze pause on me as I surveyed the battlefield from the top of the castle. Is the orc going to be alright with all the modifications you are going to make to the castle? It should be fine. I reassured him. It won't matter. Since it will help out with the war, I'm sure he's going to be fine with it. The changes that I was going to bring to the castle would not only benefit me but Silig as well. Not only that, but after having saved his life not too long ago, there was no way Silig would disagree with what I was doing. He might be surprised initially by the appearance of the dwarves, but I'm sure he's going to be understanding. Well, if you say so. How do you want us to modify the castle? For now, I want you guys to focus on making the mana chamber. My priority at the moment was breaking through to SS-rank. Although I was uncertain, I had a feeling that the stronger I became, the harder it would be for the other me to take over my body. Having said that, given his original strength, I was beginning to wonder if my efforts had been in vain. After some consideration, I realized that the only way for me to escape the influence of my other self was to reach a level comparable to his. Although I wasn't sure what his true strength was, I knew it wasn't something I couldn't attain in the span of 2 years. It was simply impossible. Still, I can't just give up. Even if one day he might end up taking over, I didn't want to have any regrets. By the time my life reached an end, I wanted to at least accomplish everything that I had set out to do. Or lay a foundation for that. Just like my plan with Amora. After you're done setting up the mana chamber, I want you to help me set up some defensive measures for when the next wave comes. What about after the war? Jamnuk walked over to us. Peering down the castle which sat atop a large hill, I thought for a moment before replying. There's a lot of things that I want to get done here after the war is done. By the time you two return and sort out the problems with Inferno, how about sending more dwarves here to help me set up a city? A city? Both Rander and Jamnuk looked at me with surprised looks. I silently nodded my head. I'm going to contact the Elven Queen not long after the war ends, and also have her help me out with this project. The end goal is to turn this planet into a trump card for when the third cataclysm arrives. My ambitions for this planet were big. Very big. I had initially just wanted to turn this planet into one where I would have the orcs slowly raise an army for when the third cataclysm arrived, but I realized that this planet had a lot more potential than that. It had the potential to become a trump card that could turn things around during the third cataclysm if used correctly. Not only would it also bring me an endless source of income, but it would also allow me to build a better relationship with the other races. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. Your plan sounds great and all, but how can you make sure that the information about this planet does not get leaked? Pouring cold water on my ambitions was Rander. I sighed out loud when I heard his words. That's what I'm trying to figure out at the moment. Jezebeth could destroy this planet with just a swipe of his hand if he came to know about its existence. For my ambition to be fulfilled, I needed to be extremely careful. Careful enough to not allow any information about this planet to leak to him. We should first start by setting up a large barrier that blocks all sort of information with the outside world. One that is similar to the one in Henler. Jamnuk suddenly suggested. I turned my head to look at him. Is that possible? It is. He nodded his head and added. It will cost a bit, but it won't be a problem for you since we'd also benefit quite a lot by establishing a city over here. This way we can process all the ores here instead of back in Henler. It will drastically reduce the chances of us getting discovered as well. Yeah. I agreed with what he said. If they were to process the ores back in Henler, the spies from Inferno would without a doubt notice something odd, compromising the whole situation. The only problem I see with the idea is the mana problem. Even if you manage to destroy the compressor that is pumping demonic energy into the air, this planet has barely any mana in it. Mana chambers only work in small rooms, and trying to fill a whole city with mana isn't feasible. It's fine. I waved my hand. The city doesn't need to be filled with mana. A couple of mana chambers will do. This place will mainly be a place where the orcs can build their forces while you guys develop technology and mine for the ores. With this planet's main source of energy being aura, I knew that it was impossible for me to use this place to train for a long extended period of time. It sucked since the time flow difference would be of big help for me, but as they all said, beggars can't be choosers. Alright, Jomnuk and I will start working on the framework of the city. We'll get back to you soon. Rander tapped me in the thigh. Well, at least that area. Laughing out loud, he waved his hand. We'll be going back now, I'll let you know if we need anything. Yeah. My head shook when I saw Rander leave while laughing. At this point, I'm not even surprised.